Editor's comments. Modern psychotherapy is well aware of the circumstance that Hill describes in the preceding paragraph. In the chapters on autosuggestion and hypnosis, reference was made to childhood traumas that result in phobias, compulsive behaviors, fixations, or complexes. However, there are instances in which the implanting of a suggestion is much more subtle. Hypnotherapists have found that common phrases such as, "Don't you ever say no to me again," "I'm afraid she'll never get over it," or "You're just like your father," can hamper a person's abilities later in life if such phrases were said often enough, or at a time when a child was particularly vulnerable. This is the end of the editor's comments. Criticism is the one form of service of which everyone has too much. Everyone has a stock of it, which is handed out gratis whether called for or not. Your nearest relatives are often the worst offenders. It should be recognized as a crime. In reality, it is a crime of the worst nature for any parent to build inferiority complexes in the mind of a child through unnecessary criticism. Employers who understand human nature get the best there is in people not by criticism, but by constructive suggestion. Parents may accomplish the same results with their children. Criticism will plant fear in the human heart, or resentment, but it will not build love or affection. Symptoms of the fear of criticism. This fear is almost as universal as the fear of poverty, and its effects are just as fatal to personal achievement, mainly because this fear destroys initiative and discourages the use of imagination. The major symptoms of the fear are: 1. Self-consciousness, generally expressed through nervousness, timidity in conversation and in meeting strangers, awkward movements, and shifting of the eyes. 2. Lack of poise, expressed through lack of voice control, nervousness in the presence of others, poor posture, poor memory. 3. Personality weaknesses, lacking in firmness of decision, personal charm, and ability to express opinions definitely, the habit of sidestepping issues instead of meeting them squarely, agreeing with others without careful examination of their opinions. 4. Inferiority complex, the habit of expressing your own self-approval as a means of covering up your feeling of inferiority, using big words to impress others, often without knowing the real meaning of the words, imitating others in dress, speech, and manners, boasting of imaginary achievements, and acting superior to cover up the fact that you feel inferior. 5. Extravagance, the habit of trying to keep up with the Joneses and spending beyond your income. 6. Lack of initiative, failure to embrace opportunities for self-advancement, fear to express opinions, lack of confidence in your own ideas, giving evasive answers to questions asked by superiors, hesitancy of manner and speech, deceit in both words and deeds. 7. Lack of ambition, mental and physical laziness, lack of self-assertion, slowness in reaching decisions, being too easily influenced, the habit of accepting defeat without protest, or quitting an undertaking when opposed by others. Also the habit of criticizing others behind their backs and flattering them to their faces, suspicion of other people without cause, lack of tactfulness of manner and speech, and unwillingness to accept the blame for mistakes. The third basic fear, the fear of ill health. This fear may be traced to both physical and social heredity. It is closely associated with the causes of fear of old age and the fear of death. We fear ill health because of the terrible pictures that have been planted in our minds of what may happen if death should overtake us. We also fear it because of the economic toll that it may claim. One reputable physician estimated that 75% of all people who visit doctors are suffering with hypochondria, Imaginary illness. It has been shown that the fear of disease, even when there is not the slightest cause for fear, often produces the physical symptoms of the disease feared. Powerful and mighty is the human mind. It builds or it destroys. Through a series of experiments, my staff proved how susceptible people are to the power of suggestion. We asked 3 acquaintances to visit separately with the victim. They were instructed to pose the question, "What ails you? You look terribly ill." The first questioner provoked a grin from him and a nonchalant, "Oh, nothing, I'm all right." The second questioner was answered with a statement, "I don't know exactly, but I do feel badly." The third questioner was met with the admission that the victim was actually feeling ill. Editor's comment. Hill's experiment is one that you do not want to carry too far. It is not that different from the principle behind certain religious sects whose members take vengeance on their enemies by hexing or placing a spell on a victim. The spell only works because the victim believes that spells can be cast and that it is possible he or she could be hexed. When the hex victim is informed that someone has cast a spell on them, they accept that it is possible, and their mind does the rest. The same theory operated when Hill's associate was told 3 times that he looked ill. He believed it was possible. Being told 3 times was convincing, and his mind went to work and made it so. This is the end of the editor's comment. There is overwhelming evidence that disease sometimes begins in the form of negative thought impulse. Such thoughts may be planted in your mind by suggestion or created by you in your own mind. Doctors send patients to new climates for their health because a change of mental attitude is necessary. The seed of fear of ill health lives in every human mind. Worry, fear, discouragement, or disappointment can cause this seed to germinate and grow. Symptoms of the fear of ill health. The symptoms of this almost universal fear are 1. Autosuggestion. The habit of negative use of self-suggestion by looking for and expecting to find symptoms of all kinds of disease. Enjoying your imaginary illness and speaking of it as being real. The habit of trying fads and isms recommended by others as having therapeutic value. Talking to others of operations, accidents, and other forms of illness. Experimenting with diets, physical exercises, weight loss systems without professional guidance. Trying home remedies, patent medicines, and quack remedies. 2. Hypochondria, a medical term for imaginary disease. The habit of excessively talking about illness, and by concentrating the mind on disease you begin to expect it to happen to you. Nothing that comes in bottles can cure this condition. It is brought on by negative thinking, and nothing but positive thought can cure it. Hypochondria is said to do as much damage on occasion as the real disease might do. 3. Exercise. Fear of ill health often interferes with proper physical exercise and results in overweight. 4. Susceptibility. Fear of ill health breaks down your natural resistance, which makes you susceptible to real disease. The fear of ill health is often related to the fear of poverty, especially in the case of the hypochondriac, who constantly worries about the possibility of having to pay doctor's bills, hospital bills, etc. This type of person spends much time preparing for sickness, talking about death, saving money for cemetery plots, burial expenses, and such. 5. Self-coddling. The habit of seeking sympathy. The habit of feigning illness to cover your laziness, or to serve as an alibi for lack of ambition. People often resort to this trick to avoid work. 6. Intemperance. The habit of using alcohol or drugs to destroy pain instead of eliminating the cause. 7. The habit of reading about illness and worrying over the possibility of being stricken by it. The fourth basic fear, the fear of loss of love. Jealousy and other similar forms of neurosis grow out of our fear of the loss of love of someone. This fear is the most painful of all the 6 basic fears. It probably plays more havoc with the body and mind than any of the other basic fears. Editor's comment. By way of introduction to each of the 6 basic fears, Napoleon Hill usually postulates how the fear originated in humans. In the original edition of this book, he suggested that the fear of loss of love may have started with prehistoric man's habit of stealing his neighbor's mate and taking liberties with her whenever he could. Though amusing, this theory does not take into account that women fear the loss of a love just as profoundly as men do, and both men and women fear losing the love of not just their mates, but also of family members and others with whom they are close. How the emotion of love originated may remain a mystery, but there is no mystery about how we feel when we lose it. This is the end of the editor's comment. Symptoms of the fear of loss of love. The distinguishing symptoms of this fear are 1. Jealousy. The habit of being suspicious of friends and loved ones. The habit of accusing wife or husband of infidelity without grounds. General suspicion of everyone and absolute faith in no one. 2. Fault-finding. The habit of finding fault with friends, relatives, business associates, and loved ones upon the slightest provocation, or without any cause whatsoever. 3. Gambling. The habit of gambling, stealing, cheating, and otherwise taking hazardous chances to provide money for loved ones, in the belief that love can be bought. The habit of spending beyond your means, or incurring debts to provide gifts for loved ones in order to make a good impression. Also insomnia, nervousness, lack of persistence, weakness of will, lack of self-control, lack of self-reliance, bad temper. The fifth basic fear, the fear of old age. In the main, this fear grows out of 2 sources. First, the thought that old age may bring with it poverty. Second is the concern that many have for what may await them in the world beyond. The most common cause of fear of old age is associated with the possibility of poverty. Poorhouse is not a pretty word. It throws a chill into the mind of every person who faces the possibility of having to spend declining years having to live on some form of charity. The possibility of ill health, which is more common as people grow older, is also a contributing cause of this common fear of old age, as is concern about diminishing sexuality. Another contributing cause of the fear of old age is the possibility of loss of freedom and independence, as old age may bring with it the loss of both physical and economic freedom. Symptoms of the fear of old age. The most common symptoms of this fear are 1. Lack of enthusiasm. The tendency to slow down and develop an inferiority complex, falsely believing you are slipping because of age. The habit of killing off initiative, imagination, and self-reliance by falsely believing you are too old to exercise these qualities. 2. Self-consciousness of speech. The habit of speaking apologetically of yourself as being old merely because you have reached the age of 40 or 50, instead of reversing the rule and expressing gratitude for having reached the age of wisdom and understanding. 3. Inappropriate dress and action. Trying to appear much younger than your age by going overboard in your attempt to keep up with the style and mannerisms of youth. The sixth basic fear, the fear of death. To some, this is the cruelest of all the basic fears. The reason is obvious. The terrible pangs of fear associated with the thought of death, in the majority of cases, may be charged to religious fanaticism. So-called heathens are less afraid of death than the more civilized. For hundreds of millions of years we have been asking the still unanswered questions, where did I come from, and where am I going? During the darker ages of the past, the more cunning and crafty were not slow to offer the answer to these questions for a price. Come into my tent, embrace my faith, accept my dogmas, and I will give you a ticket that will admit you straight into heaven when you die, says the religious leader. Remain out of my tent, says the same leader, and the devil will take you and burn you throughout eternity. The thought of eternal punishment destroys interest in life and makes happiness impossible. While the religious leader may not actually be able to provide safe conduct into heaven or send you to hell, the possibility of the latter seems terrible. The very thought of it takes hold of the imagination in such a realistic way that it paralyzes reason and sets up the fear of death. The fear of death is not as common now as it was during the age when there were no great colleges and universities. People of science have turned the spotlight of truth upon the world, and this truth is rapidly freeing men and women from this terrible fear of death. The young men and women who attend the colleges and universities are not easily impressed by fire and brimstone. Through knowledge, the fears of the dark ages that grip the mind have been dispelled. The entire world is made up of only four things: time, space, energy, and matter. In elementary physics, we learn that neither matter nor energy can be created or destroyed. Both matter and energy can be transformed, but neither can be destroyed. Life is energy, if it is anything. If neither energy nor matter can be destroyed, of course life itself cannot be destroyed. Life, like other forms of energy, may be passed through various processes of transition or change, but it cannot be destroyed. Death is mere transition. And if death is not mere change or transition, then nothing comes after death except a long, eternal, peaceful sleep. And sleep is nothing to be feared. If you can accept the logic of this, you may forever wipe out your fear of death. Symptoms of the fear of death. The general symptoms of this fear are: 1. The habit of thinking about dying, instead of making the most of life. This is generally due to lack of purpose or lack of a suitable occupation. This fear is more prevalent among the aged, but sometimes the more youthful are victims of it. The greatest of all remedies for the fear of death is a burning desire for achievement, backed by useful service to others. A busy person seldom has time to think about dying. A busy person finds life too thrilling to worry about death. 2. Sometimes the fear of death is closely associated with the fear of poverty, where death would leave loved ones poverty-stricken. 3. In other cases, the fear of death is caused by illness and the breakdown of physical body resistance. 4. The most common causes of the fear of death are ill health, poverty, lack of appropriate occupation, disappointment over love, insanity, and religious fanaticism. The disaster of worry and destructive thinking. Worry is a state of mind based upon fear. It works slowly but persistently. It is insidious and subtle. Step by step, it digs itself in until it paralyzes the reasoning faculty and destroys self-confidence and initiative. Worry is a form of sustained fear caused by indecision. Therefore, it is a state of mind that can be controlled. An unsettled mind is helpless. Indecision makes an unsettled mind. Most individuals lack the willpower to reach decisions promptly and to stand by them after they have been made. We do not worry over conditions once we have reached a decision to follow a definite line of action. I once interviewed a man who was sentenced to be electrocuted 2 hours later. The condemned man was the calmest of the 8 men who were in the death cell with him. His calmness prompted me to ask him how it felt to know that he was going into eternity in a short while. With a smile of confidence on his face, he said, "It feels fine. Just think, brother, my troubles will soon be over. I've had nothing but trouble all my life. It has been a hardship to get food and clothing. Soon, I will not need these things. I have felt fine ever since I learned for certain that I must die. I made up my mind then to accept my fate in good spirit." As he spoke, he devoured a dinner sufficient for 3 men, eating every mouthful of the food brought to him, and apparently enjoying it as much as if no disaster awaited him. Decision gave this man resignation to his fate. Decision can also prevent one's acceptance of undesired circumstances. Through indecision, the 6 basic fears become translated into a state of worry. Relieve yourself forever of the fear of death by reaching a decision to accept death as an inescapable event. Eliminate the fear of old age by reaching a decision to accept it not as a handicap, but as a great blessing that carries with it wisdom, self-control, and understanding. Master the fear of loss of love by reaching a decision to get along without love, if that is necessary. Defeat the fear of criticism by reaching a decision not to worry about what other people think, do, or say. Overcome the fear of ill health by the decision to forget symptoms. And whip the fear of poverty by reaching a decision to get along with whatever wealth you can accumulate without worry. Kill the habit of worry in all its forms by reaching a general blanket decision that nothing life has to offer is worth the price of worry. With this decision will come poise, peace of mind, and calmness of thought, which will bring happiness. If your mind is filled with fear, you not only destroy your own chances of intelligent action, but you transmit these destructive vibrations to the minds of all who come into contact with you, and you destroy their chances too. Even a dog or a horse knows when its master lacks courage. It will pick up the vibrations of fear given off by its master and behave accordingly. The vibrations of fear pass from one mind to another just as quickly and as surely as the sound of the human voice passes from the broadcasting station to a radio receiver. The person who constantly speaks of negative or destructive thoughts is practically certain to experience the results of those words in the form of destructive feedback. But even negative thoughts, without words, will come back to you. The release of destructive thought impulses alone also produces feedback in more ways than one. First, and perhaps most important to be remembered, the person who releases thoughts of a destructive nature must suffer damage through the breaking down of creative imagination. Secondly, the presence in the mind of any destructive emotion develops a negative personality, which repels people and often converts them into antagonists. The third source of damage is that negative thoughts not only affect others, but they also embed themselves in the subconscious mind of the person releasing them and there become a part of that person's character. Your business in life is to achieve success. To be successful, you must find peace of mind, acquire the material needs of life, and above all, attain happiness. All of these indications of success begin in the form of thought impulses. You control your own mind. You have the power to feed it whatever thought impulses you choose. With this goes the responsibility of using your mind constructively. You are the master of your own earthly destiny, just as surely as you have the power to control your own thoughts. You may influence, direct, and eventually control your own environment, making your life what you want it to be. Or you may neglect to make your life what you want, and you will be adrift on the seas of circumstance, where you will be tossed like a wood chip on the waves of the ocean. The Devil's Workshop. In addition to the 6 basic fears, there is another evil by which people suffer. It constitutes a rich soil in which the seeds of failure grow abundantly. It is so subtle that its presence often is not detected. It is more deeply rooted and more often fatal than all of the 6 fears. For want of a better name, let us call this evil susceptibility to negative influences. Those who accumulate great riches always protect themselves against negative influences. The poverty-stricken never do. Those who succeed in any calling must prepare their minds to resist such influences. If you are reading this book to learn how to grow rich, you should examine yourself very carefully to determine whether you are susceptible to negative influences. If you neglect this self-analysis, you will give up your right to attain the object of your desires. Make your analysis searching. As you read the following questions, be tough on yourself. Go at the task as carefully as you would if you were searching for any other enemy you knew was waiting to ambush you. You must deal with your own faults as you would with a real and serious enemy. You can easily protect yourself against real enemies because there are laws, police, and courts to deal with them. But this 7th basic evil is more difficult to master because it strikes when you are not aware of its presence, when you are asleep and while you are awake. Moreover, its weapon is intangible because it consists of merely a state of mind. Negative influences are also dangerous because they come in so many different forms. Sometimes they enter the mind through the well-meant words of your friends and relatives. At other times they come from within, through your own mental attitude. Always it is as deadly as poison, even though it may not kill as quickly. How to protect yourself against negative influences. To protect yourself against negative influences, whether of your own making or the result of negative people around you, recognize that your willpower is your defense. You must put it into constant use until it builds a wall of immunity against negative influences in your own mind. Recognize that you and every other human being are, by nature, lazy, indifferent, and susceptible to all suggestions that reinforce your weaknesses. Recognize that you are, by nature, susceptible to all of the 6 basic fears, and you must set up habits to counteract all these fears. Recognize that negative influences often work on you through your subconscious mind, and are therefore difficult to detect. Keep your mind closed against all people who depress or discourage you in any way. Clean out your medicine chest, and stop pandering to colds, aches, pains, and imaginary illness. Deliberately seek the company of people who influence you to think and act for yourself. Do not expect troubles, as they have a tendency not to disappoint. Without doubt, the most common weakness of all human beings is the habit of leaving their minds open to the negative influences of other people. This weakness is all the more damaging because most people do not even know they do it. The following list of questions is designed to help you see yourself as you really are. You should read through the list now. Then set aside a day when you can give adequate time to go through the list again and thoroughly answer each question. When you do this, I advise that you read the questions and state your answers aloud so you can hear your own voice. This will make it easier for you to be truthful with yourself.
I'm Rosary Mike.
Promotional copy.
Cashier Royal. Tagan. Turinde ko ng style.